and we try this one more time. Bishul Akum says the Mishnah on Avodah Zarah Daf Lamed Hem and Beis Ilu Dvarim Shel Akum Asurin Veini Suran Isser Hana. They're Asur, but not Asur Bahana. What is this? Chol Shachol Vayakum Veini Yisrael Re'eu. We spoke about that. Hapas. We did not speak about that, but we should. V'Hashemen Shalahen, which also. Rebbe Ubeis Dinoi Hitiru Hashemen V'Hashlakos V'Chulu. That's the Mishnah. Shlakos is cooked foods. Comes along the Gemara in Avodah Zarah at the end of Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis, and the Gemara over there discusses Hashlakos. Shlakos are cooked items. The Gemara asks, immediately, where do we know this from? Says the Gemara to Pasuk, Eichel b'ketz tishveni v'chaltu mayim b'ketz v'titin li v'shatisi kemayim ma mayim shlo nishtanu av eichel shlo nishtanu. The Gemara has a kasha. The Gemara goes back and forth, and the Gemara concludes Ella Midi Rabbanan. Bishul Akum is an Isser de Rabbanan, and the Kra is a Smachta Ba'alma Hu. I just added a word to the Gemara. I guess if Rav Asher Weiss could edit the Malach's Lashon, we could, add in a Hu. Says Ramesha Sternbach. Vihine. And this for those who want to know, this is what we call the emotional part of the Shir. That's what a Hakdama is. Right, very good. That's why we preface this is called emotional, that there's an Isser. Now, in order to portray the level of Isser, so for some people you tell them it's an Isser D'Rabbanan. That's enough. Why is that enough? Because the Rabbanans are Asr. And if whoever has Sveikis, how Asr the Rabbanans are, Ayin in Rabbeinu Yoina's Shari Tshuva, and he goes out late to explain to us how Asr the Rabbanans are. But in case someone needs, a gadol to write extreme l'shaynes for him to pay attention, so Ramesh Sternbach comes along, and Ramesh Sternbach says, "V'hine iser bishul akum chomer me'oid." It's very chomer. Shavurish b'gemar v'dezara shav she'isur midrabanan. Says Ramesh Sternbach, "Mikol makayim yesh esmachda b'pasik." There's an esmachda, which is always true, by the way. Stam, which Ramesh Sternbach, which is part of the reason why I think it's important to hear. When a Gemara says there are Rabbanan Esmachta Ba'alma, Esmachta is a high level. Often when I don't want to say half, many of the Machlaikisim throughout Rambam, when Rambam, he continues, many of the Machlaikisim throughout Rambam, when Rambam says something is Osir, it's Chayiv, there is Malkus, there isn't Malkus, comes from such a Nikuda, there is a Pasik, there isn't a Pasik, it's an Esmachta that makes a level of the right. Says Ramesh Sternbach, Shamati, B'Shem, Hagoyin Rav Chaim Ibrisk, Begeder Asmachta. What does it mean? Shekavana, says Rav Chaim, Sha'atayra Bikshu Lanu Linhoig B'Zeh Isser. Fascinating, Rav Chaim. The Torah is telling us V'Noyig Isser. V'Zeh Isser Mamish Kavui Chazal. It's almost like Hiniach Lanu Makoy Min HaShemayim, that the Torah gave the makim for Chazal to create the Isser. But Kara, to be an Isser, Daraisa, he quotes a Ritva, V'chenik midu achareidim imsilas nefesh, sholit ga'el be'Isser zeh, kam betkufas eimim, l'cheinish li zoyer, harbe bazeh. Okay, so for those who saying a Gemara says Asr Rabbanan is enough, wonderful. For those that need the extra emotional chizik, to hear that when the Gemara says asmachta means it's very asr, givaldik. And for the rest of us, let's move on. Why is it asr? Very important. Why is it asr? Says the Arzarua, Shar Bishul Mishom, Gezira, Shalech Lenu Goy Davar Tameh. The reason is, we're afraid the guy, this is one of the reasons, the guy may feed us something tameh. Rashi said, what's the reason? Yisrael ragil etzlai b'meichol u'b'mishnah v'yechlenu davar tameh. That the Yisrael shouldn't hang out with the guy. So we have two timing. The Arzura told us the tam is what? That we're afraid, and there's obvious nafkaminas. The Arzura told us the tam is that the reason is that you don't want him to put in something tameh. What's the obvious nafkamina? The obvious nafkamina is in a controlled environment, right? If I go and I take kosher ingredients and I add it into the pot, and the guy comes and just turns on the flame, we know there's no shemo yachlenu davar tameh. Why? Because I'm standing there watching him. But you still have the issue that Rashi's telling us that your rugul etzlai, which are the two reasons that the Isser was created. Taisus really extends that and gives us the more global reason that we've seen already, which is Misham Chasanais. The Chachmas Adam Lamaisa codifies the halacha that Isru Chazal Misham Chasanais. Va'oid Shemia Yisrael Ragul Echem B'Shleim Yachilenu Davar Tami. So therefore, it is also. Now, the big discussion, and this is a tremendous discussion. Maybe we'll explain why, is what is a Bishul of Yisrael Mummer? Why is this such a tremendous discussion? So it happens to be here in America, it's not such a tremendous discussion. Not that we don't have Mumarim, but that's not where the issue in the Bishul is happening. It's not where the issue in the Bishul is happening. Where is the issue in the Bishul happening in America? By Goyim. So then this next shmooze doesn't apply. This is extremely relevant in Eretz Yisrael, in which many, if not all, of the low-level hachsherim, the issue is Bishul Akum. That's the first level issue. What do you mean? It's very simple. Just one dot of mitzias is they don't have pilot lights in Eretz Yisrael. A pilot light, which we probably won't get to in today's year, we'll probably have to have a part 2. Pilot light is a little fire that stays on always underneath the pot. Therefore, even when the pot overflows and it knocks out the fire, there's still a fire there. And then when the worker relights, it is coming from the original fire, which was made by a Yid, and whether that's the Chatchila or not, Lamaisa, all of us Ashkenazim hold that B'di'evet, that's for sure fine. But now if I have a Yisrael Mummer in the kitchen, which is very, very classical, and even in Eretz Yisrael it really goes the next level, which we're also not going to touch upon, which is the Ethiopians, which is a tremendous world war. There, Chacham Avadia held that there's only Geiris L'Chumra, meaning he held that they're Be'etzem Yidin. Rav Elyashiv held not just Geiris L'Chumra, they need Geiris Amiti, which means according to Rav Elyashiv, they're full-fledged Goyim. And therefore, if you're going to have a low-level Sephardi Hechsher, which was designed to be that, then it's easier to talk about Israeli Hechsher when you're in America. People get less emotional because I didn't just take away your shawarma. When you go to Eretz Yisrael, it's much worse. But if you now go into a low-level Sephardi Hechsher, which was designed to be low-level, as Chacham Avadia himself would say, I designed the Hechsher to flood the market with as much potential kashrus, so now they're going to have Ethiopians working, which maybe Lefi Chacham Avadia's Kula is okay, but we hold their Goyim. But that's not our discussion. We're discussing Mumarim. So over here, we're going to do this quickly. It's Tiferes L'Maisha, which is brought, the Chaver here saw this, brought in the Pischei Tshuva on the page over there. Says the Tiferes L'Maisha that the reason for Bishul Akum is the Shem Yachlanu Davar Tamei and Vishab Chasanas. Says the Tiferes L'Maisha, what's the Nafka Mina? Bishul Mummer. Bishul Mummer. It's going to be Aser Davi Mummer L'Chol HaTorah. L'man Dam Rishab Chasanas. It's mutter. Why is it mutter? Because L'maisa he's a Yid, and therefore if he's a Yid, there's no problem hanging out with him marrying his daughter. Why not? Because she's a Yid. She's a Yid, Jew, female Yid. That was not the word we're looking for. Yid in female. Anyway? A Yid. Okay. Thank you for your help. It's awesome. And therefore, the Tiferes L'Maisha is Mala Atzad L'Kula. The Sheila is, what is the Lehalacha? So the Chazon Ish comes along, and the Chazon Ish says, the Pita Shabachal Shabbos B'Ferhesia is Aser. Avol B'Pischei Tshuva, he quotes our Tiferes L'Maisha, that he says the Pas Mutter, not like another Tiferes L'Maisha. Ramosha comes along, and only past that's again, I don't really want to get too bogged down here. I want to just get to the end over here. Ramosha of this chilik. Ramosha comes along, and Ramosha says that it's a suffix gadol sheyoyser yonayta leimer the less leidina da'akum. I mean, they have a din of a yid. Even the achronim are machmer b'yayin, which, by the way, parenthetically, is a reason why on yayin you want to have a good hechsher. And the reason why some of the very famous wines, unfortunately, people drink with horrible Israeli hechsherim, not horrible Israelis. The hechsherim are horrible, the Israelis are beautiful. But the horrible hechsherim are very, very problematic because the workers in the wine situation are non-Jews. And therefore, all the wine is treif. Says Ramosha, he just gave us a lima that we're machmir. Comes on Rebelsky, and Rebelsky comes along, and he says he's Shamati from Ramoshe Shaminaglo Okel Af Bibishol Tamachaber Hechmir V'chein Shamati from Avram Shapira V'hegeli Shekin Shomer Abonim Harbi Mikol Chugim V'loy Shomer Afer God Nogul Eser. Fascinating, right? Belsky telling us that the minhag in America was to be mekel on Bishul Akum of a Mechalel Shabbos, v'taimam neshesamchal roiv rishonim, etc. Now, the reason why this is very important to know that there is a makam kula, because there are some very, very tricky situations, family situations. Someone has a cousin, a sibling, a relative who is not from, and they come over and they make themselves an egg in your house. You're going to start telling them that they chafed up this and they chafed up the pot, and then you're not going to eat the food. It's nishpashit. So I'm not saying it's the chatchila, but Rebelsky is saying that there is a makam to be mekel, and it's important to know. Certainly, for regarding the kelim, one would be mekel amongst other. Rav Nevinsel says as well. Why would he say? Right. Rashi in the Mishnah said, no, it's two Rashis. Slicha. This is what happens when you just read Marmakayim. You should never do that. It's Rashi al Mishnah. Rashi brings down both timim. I over here just brought down Rashi to bring down this. Yeah. It's Rashi al Mishnah. No, you ask a good question, but it's Rashi al Mishnah. Okay, comes and sits Eliezer. Good. Let's. The point here we're bringing out is what's the psak? The psak is l'chatchilu or machmir. But makom atzarach there is a makom to be mekel. Rav Yashiv says chilayim shel yameinu, and then just parenthetically, there's a much larger sugya that's brewing over here, which is what is called tinik shenishba. What is the status of a tinik shenishba? Do they have a status of mechal shabbos? Not a status of mechal shabbos. That's a much larger sugya, which ironically might have just switched in the last few months, because one of the big tainas of the tinik shenishba is that they were never exposed to real Judaism, and therefore they Pasha don't know, so they don't get a din of a guy. And that might even be a raya now, because we're seeing that some of these kibbutzniks that would never have ever let anyone in, which you just have to realize, if they don't let anyone in, then what happens to the kids? The kids grow up with that, and they have zero affiliation. Now are changing, but that is the halacha li maisa. That is halacha li maisa. So now, I'm missing. What's next? My page is cut off.
The next page?
Yeah, what's the next thing?
Doesn't
have. Nachash Mashu Chai. Good. My page had they cut off. Good. So now let's discuss what is Bishul Akum. Good. So again, what's halach l'maisa? There's two timing for Bishul Akum. Good. Lahalacha, we're machmir on mumarim. We're machmir on mechali Shabbos lichatchila. B'diavad b'makom atzayrech. Ask a shayla. We will say is on the kelim pashtus one would be mekel. On the eating of the item, it will depend, I guess, on the type of tzarech. But certainly now, if one wants to know, okay, can I go to some schnitzel place where the guy behind the counter is a mechal Shabbos? The answer is not lechatchila. Can we say it's treif? No, we can't say it's treif. As we're seeing the Ari Rishonim that are mekel, and it's actually interesting if anyone who's ever learned any part of halacha, it's fascinating. Usually we have Rishonim give both time, and we don't usually start mechalik nafkaminas lemaisa unless the Shulchan Aruch did it, which it didn't. But okay, the latter poskim are doing that. So now the question is, why is Bishul Akum? What are the conditions of Bishul Akum? There are two conditions of Bishul Akum. What are the two conditions? The first condition is Nechal Chai. The second condition is Oila Shulchan Melachim. Now, this is something that we just have to put into our brain. It's one dot counterintuitive. You need both of them, let's just listen, both of them to be asr. Inoi Nechal Chai and Oila Shulchan Melachim. So for example, an apple is Oila Shulchan Melachim? Yes. What is Oila Shulchan Melachim we're going to get to? But is an apple a chash food where they serve it to the president and the queen? Of course. An apple is an apple. What's better than a good apple? I need Rav Avigdor Miller to understand how good the apple is. Did anyone ever actually see the Rav Avigdor Miller? No, because everyone just quotes Rav Avigdor Miller about an apples. But I've never saw it. I've probably quoted it 1,000 times. I'm just curious if everyone actually. Yeah, he discusses the color of the apple and the shine of the apple and then the crunch of the apple. Okay. Anyways, but is it eaten raw? The answer is yes. Once an item is eaten raw, there is no Bishul Akum. What does that mean? I can take apples, put them in a pot, and allow the guy to cook it. Allow the guy to cook it, and that's mutter lechatchila. It's a little bit shocking when you hear it, because what do you mean? It's Bishul Akum. Now, part of the reason we're having this share is because anytime you hear a terrible story, part of the way to rectify it in the Welt is to try to be mechazik in that inyan. So I was just on the phone earlier today with the Rav in Eretz Yisrael, and he was telling me that a neighbor of his has children that live here in somewhere in New York, and the neighbor was asking him, he's going to visit his kids, but he has a problem. What's the problem? That his son was telling him that he just went on vacation with his wife for a week. They went to wherever they went. And when they came back, the kid said, the food that the live-in help made for us this last week was gewaldig. Could she cook for us all the time? Now, I don't know, mommy might have been a little bit insulted, but that means what just happened. That means that for a week, there was one big fat Bishul Akum in the house. Now, ironically, which we're not going to get to today, this would have been, a shelah for going to go to Rav Asher Weiss. Ironically, if it's a mamish, a living maid, there maybe is epis amakom lahakol, maybe shvachei shalanu, a big sugya, forever mekel mamish azovi and evi, that the mamish are listening to us, and it's Beis Yisrael. Ulay efsher, there would be some level of kula, but the problem is, it's one thing if it's a Shas Chak and you ask the Shaila and the Rav Gipaskins, okay, just flippantly to let a guy cook is Hashem Yirachem. So that's part of the reason why we're being mitakein, the lack of shmiras halacha by learning about it. But if let's say all they ate was applesauce, which would have been odd, and coffee, and this is the reason, which a question which is comes up every once in a while, and when the first time someone hears this thing called Bishul Akum, like, wow, fascinating, Goyim can cook for us. Okay, very good. And then, the next week, they're on an airplane, or they buy a cup of coffee from McDonald's or Starbucks or whatever it is, and they walk out like, 1 second, who made this coffee? Is mashkiach making the coffee? Like, they realize, of course there's no mashkiach. The store doesn't have a hechsher. Why would there be a mashkiach? Interesting, that was the other Dunkin' Donuts, which, by the way, just another public service announcement, just because one store has a hechsher, there's no gzeir shavas, just because Dunkin' Donuts on Avenue, whatever, has a hechsher. So now when I'm in Connecticut, I'm allowed to buy all Dunkin' Donuts. They're all kosher. No, it's all the same ingredients and the same plants. Again, maybe there is some level of something, but you just can't just buy whatever you want. But if something is eaten raw, so coffee is nechal chai. Is coffee nechal chai? Is coffee nechal chai? The beans are not nechal chai, right? Yeah, it's a little bit weird. But the water at least is nechal chai, so let's at least leave it at the water for a moment. We'll understand hopefully the beans in a moment. The water is nechal chai. So let's just understand the background. Those are the two tonight. The background over here, just to read quickly, is that Gemara in Daf Lameches. The Gemara says, "Kol hanechal k'maishu chai" is not. Which, by the way, let's just read it inside for a moment, and I'll explain to you how far this goes. Kol hanechal k'maishu chai. Where are we holding in time? Oh boy. Okay, so I'm not going to read it inside. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah Daf Lameches teaches Kol shechem ozu chai is not going to be included in Bishul Akum. Taisus and Daf Lameches and the Rambam v'chulu. All paskin, it also has to be oila al shulchan lachem. What does it mean, oila al shulchan lachem? That's the $1 million question. How do I know what kings eat? Again, and now if you're wondering where these are such random conditions, the answer is it's a gezerah derabanan. As within all gezerah derabanan, they created the parameters. The parameters that they created were that only chashiva foods, as the Rambam is really spells out very eloquently. The Rambam says, Ikar ha-gezerah is mishal chasnos. Is why? Shal yazminu ha'akum etzloi v'suda. V'davar she'ino oila shulchan lachem lachem v'zabas ein adam mazmin es chaveiroi olav. The Rambam there gave us a tremendous limud into figuring out what is oila al shulchan lachem. The Rambam does not say that, what?
It only really helps for chasnos, no?
For chasnos, not for nechal or shuchai. For oila al shulchan, no. The Rambam saying that's the ikar tam. But says the Rambam, how do we figure out? So you look, it's fascinating. A lot of the Kasher accusations, they've spoken to what the president's chef and the queen's personal whatever. The Pashtus, not the Pashtus, but Lefi the Rambam, and we see over here the Debetzina, the Ber Moshe, and it's already a Chachos Adam, that L'chaira, all it has to be is a chashuv of food. All it has to be is a chashuv of food. Once it's a chashuv of food, it's going to be a problem. Now, just to point out how far Nechel K'mo Chai goes, corn. Is corn eaten raw? Is corn eaten raw? So the answer is fresh corn is eaten raw. It's the same type of corn. You could go to the farm, pick it off the thing, and chomp down on it. It is done. It's done. It's common. It's a matzli. Now, a lot of the corns that we buy are not that fresh, so we boil them, etc., etc. Because the corn of the cup I'm talking about, you buy it now. Because of that, now again, it is a machlekes because some want to be machalik that it's not the roiv, but now there are many that are making that. Because of that, to show how far this goes, if we believe, which l'chayra it is, that corn is nechal k'meishu chai, all corn products will not have bishul akum. If the ikar ingredient, corn flakes. There's two types of corn flakes. Kiyadua. We're in America, you don't have to say this. In Eretz Yisrael, you have to say it. But no, they have those here also. The Geffen brand, if anyone buys those. But there are two types of cornflakes. You have cornflakes, which are steamrolled. That's the Kellogg's, which is whole corn. And then you have the Geffen type, which is crushed up, pulverized. That's why the bracha changes. The Geffen one is shakal. The Kellogg's one is hadama. What? Yeah, and the taste tastes exactly the same, obviously. But the Kellogg one is corn. It's corn. It just changed the form. So once it's corn, the pasha is not going to be any issue with bishul akum on it. Now, whether cereals or not have an issue with bishul akum is a totally different story. But it will be called nechal k'mois shehu chai, and therefore corn chips is another example. Corn chips is corn. If corn has no bishul akum, corn chips will have no bishul akum, which means tortilla chips, which are made out of corn, will not have bishul akum. So everyone here is wondering, and we now have 2 minutes left, why are we discussing corn chips and tortilla chips? I don't understand. Because everyone eats potato chips, right? So the answer is, if we look at the Aruch HaShulchan, again, let's just go all the way to Ramosha without getting bogged down over here. Comes like Ramosha, and they asked him, Davar potato chip. Says, Sarach Levarach Bar Pri Adama. Why? Because you could see the pri, even though it's nishtane mara di shemen shenis bashul. Atzarich leida shenis bashul b'shemen kosher. Okay, number one. Kshalei yadua ulcer. If you don't know if it's kosher oil, it's ulcer. By the way, Ramesh just told you that if you go to the Ambien movie, whatever, or a music park, and you want to buy the popcorn, the oil's probably kosher. No, you have to check if it's kosher. If you don't know, it's ulcer. V'im yeshu iser bishul akum. You know it's in kosher oils, but what about bishul akum? Now, before we continue, Ramosha, potato chips are oil al shulchan malachim? That's ridiculous. No one would ever serve a king or any friend potato chips. Good question. Let's continue. If there's a ashkacha, yeshlas shkamzel, mashkiach letakin shel yeser midim b'shlakim. Of course, the mashkiach will light the fire. Aval ema emesh lo yishkiach al zeven itzbashal de'akum. If he was not, and it was cooked by a guy, ein bazeh heter bar. Interesting lashon of Ramesh. She doesn't say it's aser. Ein bazeh heter bar. Vu kemoi kol davar nasim b'batich. Now he says a very, very, very intriguing line. Says Ramesh, it's like everything else that was made in factories, that there is yesh aimrim time on the hakel v'chei noigin roiva am ubeiseh shudrabanan ein lim chayis be'ilu shem akilim. So Ramesh is like hemming and hawing. The Shulchan Alevi Rebelski come along. Oh, what else? Good. We're going to finish with that, and we'll have to pick up for this point because we're out of time. What's the answer to that? The answer, there's different ways of answering the question. The pashtus is, once a min is oila shulchan malachim, I don't care how that min is made. Once a potato is oila shulchan malachim, like we said with corn. Once the corn is oila shulchan, do I care if I prepare the corn in a way that would never be served to the king? That's crazy. That's crazy. So therefore, again, these are massive machlaikisim. But therefore, if a potato is Eilul Shulchan Malachim, then we're going to say the potato chip is Eilul Shulchan Malachim. Some give a little bit more of a deeper lumdus, and they want to say, what is if you want to know what's like the lumdus of a potato chip, what it really is, if you make fried potatoes, which that they would serve, right? You cut up potatoes nice and gishmak with a little rosemary and a little seasoning, that would be a dish you serve the king. There are also little chips that are part of the dish, right? So potato chips are just the chips, right? Just the little burnt parts at the end. Just chips. Okay, maybe it's different lashon. Ramesha seems to be not wanting to say aser, not saying mutter, and he says, don't scream at the mekilim. Rabelsky came along.
What's his suffix?
He says don't scream.
Don't scream at the mekilim. Good. So what we're going to say is, we're going to end this year with, is don't scream at the mekilim. Don't scream at the mekilim. Does Ramesha allow it? No. But don't scream at the mekilim.